Hey, this is KalechippsDev, and welcome back to my indie game project. It still doesn't have a name, but it does have a concept. This is Devlog episode number 2. Today we're tying up all the loose ends from the last Devlog. Alright, so here's the lowdown, the skinny, the need to know. I'm an indie game developer that's creating his first full-length game. It's a combination of the fast-paced action of a dungeon-crawling RPG and the warm slice-of-life feel you get from a farming simulator into one game. Think Stardew Valley meets Enter the Gungeon. If you didn't catch the last devlog, this is a follow-up on the dungeon generation that I finished there. Feel free to check that out if you haven't, but I understand that you're a busy person and you've got a busy life, so basically it was a long journey that ended back where it started, with rectangle-based grid rooms. Thank you to a commenter for pointing out that made the journey a big circle. But the circle was still really messy and had a ton of issues. It was more like a poorly drawn, really crabby oval. So this video is all about polishing that up into the tidy, neat rooms that you're seeing right now. For example, sometimes you'd walk into a room and spawn on top of an enemy, sometimes a monster would spawn on top of a tree and get stuck. The art was a weird mix of my art and pre-made assets, and treasure rooms were, well, on top of being completely inaccessible, just empty of all treasure. So today we're talking everything level generation under the sun, and I'm talking loot system, new doors, UI/UX, creating handcrafted level layouts, and of course, an art update. But before we get started on that, you all shattered my expectations for the last 2 devlogs, and all I can say is, thank you. For a small-time solo developer, the idea that close to 1,000 people have now subscribed to my GM project is nuts. And I don't think I can even conceive of how many of y'all have taken the time to comment, watch, and subscribe. The last devlog, as of recording this, has just crossed 5,000 views, and I am so beyond excited that we're creating a small community in our own little corner of the game dev scene here on YouTube, so thank you for subscribing and leaving such nice feedback. Speaking of community, a Discord is coming. I just need to wait until the game is in a state where I'm ready to take community suggestions. Thank you to the so many of you who let me know that you wanted one, you've been heard, and I'm looking forward to it. Alright, first issue to take care of, level layouts. Here's the problem. I made a temporary solution last devlog where each room would spawn 5 random objects at 5 random positions in the room, but with that solution, the rooms felt sloppy, and trust me, they were. Enemies spawn on top of terrain, sometimes they spawn on top of each other, they spawn sometimes right where you walked in and kill you immediately, all of that. So I got started handcrafting a few level layouts, out of which each room picks one and places the objects itself. This is a solution that combines the random procedural generation, which determines where the levels are in respect to each other, with handcrafted layouts that determines what's actually inside each room. So while each dungeon run still feels fresh and new, the rooms don't feel like they were created by a computer, because, well, they were created by me. Anyway, after burning out after last devlog, there was no way I was going to procedurally generate what actually goes into the room, so right now the data for each layout is being stored by a level layout object, which again is crafted custom, and that's serialized into a JSON file. Serialization is just the process of taking some data and storing it into a compressed format that's easy to transmit and later reconstruct. In this case, level layouts were being serialized into a JSON file. That's a way of writing out data that can be read and written easily. If you don't know what a JSON object is, it's basically a bunch of containers, most things in code are, that are stored in a plain text, kind of like an outline for an essay. At a high level, you have a list of entities, and each entity consists of information including type and position. Here you can see one of my layout files, which has some trees and rocks. And here's another list which represents a wave of enemies, which is a separate JSON file, which has a list of pathfinders, those are skeletons, and scouts, and those are the archers. Basically, it's just a list of a bunch of entities, and each entity has whatever information it needs. In my case, it's what that entity is, that's either a tree, loot, skeletons, or archers, and their position, which is an X and a Y value. In order to write the JSON objects in a separate scene, I set up the room the way I want it, and then I have a script acting like a camera, which takes a little snapshot of all the objects in the room and writes it to a JSON file automatically. Then each room randomly picks one of those JSON files and parses it out into entities and places each one. Now, I'm not sure how scalable JSON files are, since I've got to name and keep track of each layout manually, and since they're just plain text, they're not very secure. There's nothing stopping someone from just going into a layout file, editing an enemy to turn it into a tree, or turning a rock into loot somewhere in the final game. So I'll have to look into better ways to serialize layout data. But it works for now, and there's no one nefarious snooping around my JSON files right now, since it's just me developing and playing the game. Alright, so I've got handcrafted layouts. I'm going to take a small break now to talk about some of the art that I've done in my attempt to phase out all of the game's visuals and not rely on any outside assets. So since last devlog, I've drawn a couple of rocks, which you've seen by now, but I'm going to show them off again. And I'm currently wishing that I had recorded a time-lapse of me drawing, because that would have been sick. But I guess you can just admire them. Yeah, shading and everything. And then I drew this tree by a very similar process to drawing the tile set, but it's just chillin'. And finally, there's this pedestal where weapons float up and down. Now that leaves the enemies, players, and weapons remaining to be drawn by me, but that's pretty good progress for now and something I'm pretty proud of as a non-artist. I just want to say that these took me an insanely long amount of time, and I think it was an entire morning just for these 2 rocks, but hopefully the pixel art thing has a generous learning curve, and eventually I'll be able to be pumping out pixels super quick. Small disclaimer, some people have been suggesting that I take on an artist for this game, and I'm super down for that, but, and it's a big but, I've got my plate full with solo developing for now, and I don't think the art needs for this game are big enough to justify taking on a team member. Not to mention that I wouldn't be comfortable taking on someone as an artist without paying them for their work, so yeah, for now it's just going to be me drawing my rocks. Alright, and I've also added a way to change weapons and come up with an idea for managing weapons. Basically, you're going to be able to hold 2 weapons at a time, and you swap between them using the left and right mouse buttons. Originally, the idea was that you'd hold all the weapons in your inventory, just like all the other loot and consumables that you find in the dungeon. But the whole roguelike idea is that each run has to start fresh, so the weapons need to delete when you die. But a player is going to be confused if their weapons just disappear after each run, and that would leave their inventory all patchy. So you'd be incentivized to die with as few weapons as possible, so that you can use that space in your inventory to store loot. But that's just counterintuitive to gameplay. Alright, so a little spiel about game design. This project is a mashup of 2 of my favorite genres, farming sims and roguelike dungeon crawlers. But the weapon system has illuminated a pretty critical difference that's making it hard to combine those, namely the permanence of progression. See, a key element of almost any farming game, think Harvest Moon, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, is the ability to, over time, upgrade your tools and make your farming more efficient. These tools are a part of your character. They're often indestructible or easily renewable, and as you upgrade them, they're a way to feel like you're progressing. Contrast that with the tools of the roguelike, which are weapons that, once you die, are gone forever. Each run you start with the same bare bones loadout, and you lose everything you found when you die. But imagine in a farming simulator like Harvest Moon losing your precious Mistral hammer when you accidentally pass out while watering your crops. Yeah, no good. For this game, I want there to be a permanent feel to that items you get, and in some part, permanence is necessary. A key part of the game is going to be gifting loot to townspeople to make friends and partners, and you need to keep loot and some consumables when you die. But what's stopping the player from just stockpiling a bunch of powerful loot and then wiping the dungeon in one run? I've remedied this for the time being by making the weapon system emulate the classic roguelite lose it when you die principle, but I plan for everything else in your inventory, like valuables and consumables, to last across runs. These are the things that you can store in chests and home, give to people, sell, etc. That means that weapons, which need to be fleeting, have a separate inventory system than your normal inventory, which needs to be permanent across runs. Anyway, all of that thinking resulted in this dual-wielding weapon design, where you can hold 2 weapons at once, and as you find new ones, you replace either of the 2 weapons that you're holding. But I still want there to be long-term progression, so these things are going to be tied to the relationships that you make, which grant you small but permanent buffs. I like the idea of each townsperson granting you some kind of special charm or gift when you have a relationship with them, and being able to use these boons to help you in the dungeons. I think it's appropriate that the long-term progression comes from your relationships in the game, since the idea of long-term progression came from farming simulators, to which relationships are so central. Anyway, all this thinking has been stretching this whole other game design side of my brain, so he's joining the programmer and the pixel artist for now. Thanks to the modular weapon system I have in place, swapping weapons is pretty easy. You just go up to the pedestal, select which weapon to swap, and confirm. Since you only hold 2 weapons right now, you can left and right click to use your primary and off-hand weapons respectively. Oh, and I drew all the UI elements myself as well. It's definitely something that's been slowing down development doing all the art, but it's giving me some space to really make the game feel like it's my own, and that's a proud feeling. This first half of the game is really starting to feel like a fully fleshed dungeon crawler now, which is awesome. I think I'm just coming up on a major milestone where I can think less about macro level mechanics like this and start thinking more about making content, which means more enemy types, more attack patterns, more weapons, and overall just more fun stuff to fill the dungeons. Currently, devlogs have been coming out about every week and a half, which accounts for about a weekish of development and a few days of writing and editing a video, but I want to bring that down to a week, so moving forward I'll be trying to introduce more concise update devlogs, but on a more frequent basis. I think this will keep the pace of the project really fast, which is something I'm stoked for. I just want to reiterate how grateful and honored I've been to have your support, and I hope you'll stick with me to see what this little game goes. And about all those loose ends from the last devlog, consider them tied up now. Thanks y'all.